but it wasn't. And my actions and behaviors and choices and the fact that I wasn't bearing fruit in my life and the fact that I still had stuff that God really needed to excavate and get rid of, that was the evidence that my life was not built on this foundation, no matter how much I said it was or wanted it to be. It's not a matter of wishing. That's why we have to get out of the visioning stage and into the action stage, so that the lives that we walk out are evidence of this foundation, whatever that is. Hopefully for all of us, it's something similar to this. For almost any home, you start with the foundation. The foundation for any believer is God. Number 2, habit number 3 is the habit of willpower and won't power. Willpower and won't power. Most of the time, when it comes to bad habits or it comes to things we want to change in our lives, we will say to ourselves, if I just had more willpower, I just need more willpower. And the reality is some things do need more willpower, but let's face it, when it comes to bad habits, most of the time what we need is won't power. Won't power. Willpower and won't power, the evidence of our resolved intentions. When Christine Kane was here, she talked about the difference between a resolution and being resolved. Am I resolved to my core values? Truly, and only you can answer that for yourself. How resolved am I to live a life that is authentic to my core values? How committed am I? Am I resolved for this to be the case? If I say that I want to have a heart for God's house, His people, and His harvest, what am I doing to produce that in my life? It's not enough to just say it. It means I'm going to have to say yes to things that align with that and no to the things that don't. I will do this and I won't do that if I'm going to live by that core value. Willpower will keep you in school instead of dropping out, in your marriage when things get tough, in church on Sunday when you really want to sleep in the gym working toward your weight loss goals, in the Bible growing spiritually when you'd rather be on the couch in front of the TV or on Facebook. Will. I will pray. I will study. I will work out. I will do this. Won't power, because it's just as important for us to have won't power as it is to have willpower. Won't power will keep you out of bed with that cute guy you're dating. Out of bed. Not in. Willpower is about staying out. Willpower is about getting in. Won't power will keep you out of the refrigerator late at night when that little snack will sabotage your diet. My diet. Won't power will keep you out of the department store when you really shouldn't be spending money on one more dress or another pair of shoes when we don't need them. Won't power will keep you out of ungodly relationships and away from the wrong influences. Won't power will keep you out of that popular but very profane rated R movie. An increasing number of those, sadly. Looking at the list of movies to try and find one to take my family to. Monsters University. That was it. That was it. How sad is that? If we look at the yardstick of our core values as the measurement by which we decide what we are going to feed ourselves and consume from this culture, and we look at that long list of movies and I think, well, Superman. Linda and I were talking about that the other day. Man of Steel. Can't take my 5-year-old with that, but Monsters, Inc., that was it. And how often does a kid's movie come out? The rated R ones come out 2 or 3 a week. The kid ones, you wait. As parents, you're like, when is the next one? Pixar, come on, we're waiting. It's summer, my kids are bored, we gotta go, that's it, you know. But we've got to decide where we will position ourselves and where we won't position ourselves. Be in, but not of, the world. Come out from among them and be separate. Number 3, putting first things first is fundamentally about life management. In habit 3, we're fundamentally talking about life and time management. But let me say this, it's really more than that. It's more than that. Historically, people have tried to address time management or life management with calendars and day planners and schedules, and all of those things are good and they have their place, but they are tools. They're tools. The challenge is not really about managing time, it is about managing ourselves. It is about managing ourselves. Those things, schedules, calendars, all of those things are good, but the right focus should be less on things and time as it is on relationships and results. That should be our focus. I don't care how organized you are, how color-coded your calendar, and how perfectly checked off all of your tasks are. If you are not achieving the results that align with your core values and your goals, it's all for naught. What are you checking off? If not the very things that should be connecting you to your core values. If you value your family, and that's number 2 on my list, which I, again, have fleshed out and defined. What does that mean in my life in terms of the time, the investment, not only in their needs, but in their dreams, in the people that they are? What does that mean on my calendar? Did I just check off that I went to the grocery store, got the thing my son needed for his science project, and took this one to this activity? I got things done, but did they drive my core value? Did I invest in and pour into my children today? Number 4, and we're going to camp here for most of the rest of this time. Learn to recognize the difference between what is urgent and what is important. Learn to recognize the difference between what is urgent versus what is important. And media team, if you could pull up that grid, that's where we're going to camp for a while. And you should have it in your notebook. I want to talk to you about the 4 quadrants where we tend to spend our time. And I hope you'll press into this. This is the most important part of this message today, because if you can really grasp this, you will understand how to start repositioning towards your core values. We respond, we choose, we behave in one of these 4 areas pretty much at all times. The 2 urgent quadrants are 1 and 3. We can do things that are both urgent and important. We can engage in things that are urgent but not important. We can spend a whole lot of time down in quadrant 4, which I'm going to talk about things that are neither urgent nor important. Or we can spend our lives in the quadrant of things that may not be urgent but are deeply important. Quadrant 1, those things that are both urgent and important, represent activities and events in our life that require our immediate attention. Urgent things, urgency refers to things that require or demand our immediate attention. They act upon us. Important things refers to things that contribute to our mission, our goals, our values. Important things require us to be proactive on them. Urgent things act upon us. We should be acting upon important things. So that quadrant 1 is our crisis zone. And not always crisis, though crisis things fall in there. You get a child that's injured at school, you drop everything and go. You have a family member that's had a heart attack and they're being rushed to the hospital, that is an urgent, important moment. You drop everything and go. A friend who's called in crisis needs you in that moment. Urgent and important. Again, if that friendship is tied to your core values, you will set things aside in that moment to address that friendship and that need. Some people spend way too much time in that zone. We can hover in that zone too much where everything is an urgent, important thing in the moment. An unavoidable amount of time is going to be spent in quadrant 1. We can't predict emergencies. We can't control those urgent moments. And some of our mission and ministry is going to be spent here. Let's face it, some of the ways that God deploys us in ministry means responding in urgent situations. And they may not be important to us, but if ministry is our core value, then they are important to our core value, and therefore they become important to us because they're tied to that core value of ministry. Quadrant 3, those things that are urgent but not important, represents activities and events that continually interrupt our lives and demand our attention, but are not important to us. In other words, they do not contribute anything of value to our lives, our goals, or our defining values. Our days can be filled with these, squeezing out all the other quadrants, if we are not vigilant to establish the right boundaries. Most of the time, the activity we engage in quadrant 3 is not important to us, but it's meeting someone else's expectation. It is the expectation put on us by others that for many, many reasons we feel obligated to respond to, and yet they are not important, they have no eternal value, they do not connect to our core principles, but yet we get pulled into them. Too much time in quadrant 3 leads to feeling victimized, under the control of others, prone to chameleon, people-pleasing behavior, and even worse, people who live too much in this quadrant let go of their dreams and goals because they don't think they'll ever be able to focus on them. They're not important. This is the martyr zone, by the way, where we sort of martyr ourselves to quadrant 3, responding to needs and demands of others. Attending events and activities because we feel socially pressured to be there. That we don't necessarily need to be at. We need to be at home with our kids. We need to be in the Word of God. We need to be resting. We need to be sleeping, whatever that is. But we feel some sort of pressure, unspoken expectation on the part of someone else to be there, do this, volunteer, say yes, 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 yes. This is the zone where we say yes indiscriminately, without thinking, praying, and connecting that opportunity and stewarding that opportunity by praying about whether it does or does not connect to our core principles, fall in alignment with our core gifts, talents, and abilities, and whether it has anything whatsoever to do with where God has actually been working to prepare and position us. How often do we just say yes to something and it has no connection to what God's actually been preparing us to do, but we feel obligated to say yes? And at some point, this becomes the life controlled by others. It's not yielded to God. It's not even yielded to ourselves.